Hi, Marketers Brief listeners. I'm Parker Heron, host of Ad Age's new podcast, Ad Age Insider. Ad Age Insider is a weekly dive into the trends shaping the industry, plus a summary of the news you need to know without slowing down your day. You're currently listening to a preview of Ad Age Insider on the Marketers Brief podcast feed. So if you like what you hear, go subscribe to Ad Age Insider on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a thing. Now, on to the episode. Happy Friday! Today is August 29th. This week we're taking a look at the recent cases of cultural outcry over marketing, most recently seen in the Cracker Barrel rebrand, and what brands can do when the narrative evolves into something totally unexpected. Plus, get the download on an emerging class of ad networks for AI chatbots, and the return of Svedka's Fembot. This is Ad Age Insider, taking you behind the scenes of the industry's biggest stories with the reporters who wrote them. I'm your host, Parker Heron. I don't know about you, but it's honestly been a minute since I've thought about the Cracker Barrel. But the historically country core restaurant chain was totally unmissable this past week online and in the headlines after it dropped a new logo. And then again after it scrapped those plans in response to pushback on social media, including from President Donald Trump. This is becoming an all too common occurrence. Brand does marketing, social media users get angry, political leaders weigh in, and the brand becomes a symbol of something entirely different than intended. Within that, the role of the brand in managing it all is becoming incredibly tricky. So, to get to the bottom of what's really going on here, and what it means for marketers, I called up Ad Age reporters Erika Wheless and Gillian Follett, who cover restaurant marketing and social media trends. Keep listening to learn how the brand-consumer relationship is shifting in the social age, what brands could be doing better to meet that audience, and the do's and don'ts of a brand response. Erika, Gillian, welcome to Ad Age Insider.
Hey, good to be here.
Hey, Parker. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. Erika, you cover food and restaurant marketing at Ad Age, and you wrote a fabulous explainer on the Cracker Barrel situation that we're seeing go down right now. Why is this rebrand getting so much attention?
Yeah, it has been a very interesting week for Cracker Barrel. So, as many of us have seen, so last week they came out with a new look, a new logo. It's very clean. There is no more old man. That's Uncle Herschel. There's no more old man. There's no more Cracker Barrel as part of the logo. And yet, this week we actually saw so much backlash that the brand decided to walk it back, which I think anybody in marketing knows that's a big deal to have all the time, money, and effort that goes into a new look, a new logo, and then to say, just kidding. So they issued a statement on Twitter and rolled it back and said, we're going to go back to our old logo. However, what we have yet to hear from them on is the brand also, was getting some flack for renovating their restaurants. So they have some more updated, some lighter colors, less clutter on the walls. And we're not quite sure if that will also stop. In writing about this, I spoke to a marketing expert who was just like, this is such an interesting time that we live in, that a sitting president will will give his opinion on what's happening with brands. But yes, so on Tuesday night, President Trump took to Truth Social and he posted about Cracker Barrel should go back to its old logo. And then, in fact, several hours later on Twitter, the brand did just that. And then several hours after that, President Trump was posted once again and was like, glad to see it. Good job. Like, you're going to make your customers very happy.
Yes, I certainly haven't thought about Cracker Barrel very much since I was a child. Similarly, I hadn't actually given a lot of thought to another brand that's in the news recently, American Eagle. But American Eagle is another example of us seeing brands blowing up on social media in the headlines for these marketing moves. And Gillian, you're Ad Age's social media and influencer expert. You've also done some gorgeous coverage of the American Eagle situation. Give us a quick recap on what went down with American Eagle this summer.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably came across this to some extent just because it was like everywhere on social media. But basically, American Eagle launched a campaign with Sydney Sweeney, who's this actress, sort of like a Gen Z it girl, where they kind of played on this pun of her having great genes as in denim and genes as in genetics. It didn't go over well because some people accused American Eagle of sort of pro-eugenics sort of messaging with the genetic component to it. The fact that she's like a white, blonde woman had some people kind of raising eyebrows. There's also some backlash around like kind of the over-sexualization of her in the ads. There was like one where the camera pretty like panned down to her breasts and zoomed in, and then she was like, "Hey, eyes up here." So I think a lot of the kind of backlash to it, beyond the whole kind of eugenics question of it, is sort of, especially Gen Z, who is kind of the target audience for American Eagle, just wondering who is American Eagle kind of marketing this towards when they're, it seems kind of like pandering to sort of the male gaze and like the fact that like Sydney Sweeney is kind of this like conventionally attractive, thin woman. It didn't really, they didn't feel represented necessarily by her and like the jeans that she was modeling. And also a few people pointed out that like the jeans didn't really fit her in a lot of the posts. They looked kind of baggy and not great on her. So they were kind of just confused about who sort of was the audience for this campaign.
Interesting. I was thinking that denim jacket she was wearing looked quite small on her, actually. What you're saying here actually goes well into a takeaway that I was feeling from both of these situations. Neither of these were specifically social media campaigns, but social media is where people are taking the narrative of the marketing work for Cracker Barrel and American Eagle and putting it on a whole new path than probably those companies intended them to go on. So, what's going on here? Why does it seem like recently there is such a turbulent relationship between brands and consumers, particularly when it comes to social media? Any thoughts on what's happening?
Yeah, I can start with that. I mean, I think for, and this is something that I had a couple of other marketing experts talk about, because this was my big question, right? Like, nobody goes through a rebrand or a brand refresh for fun. Like, these are a lot of time, money, effort, all that kind of thing. So it's not like on a whim. And a couple of experts that I talked to about this were kind of, that's where they got stuck too. They were like, I really question what data and like what feedback the brand was getting that they felt like this was an okay thing to go through with. And I know that Cracker Barrel, like the CMO, has been like, we were listening to consumers, we were listening to like potential consumers, we asked our employees what they thought. But this is kind of the thing, right? Like, you, if you ask this many people, and yet on social people are very vocal about like, I do not like it. How much of this is the vocal minority? Like, how much of it is like the people who actually like it don't feel the need to go on social media and be like, I actually really like it. You know, everybody loves to be like, I had a bad experience, I'm going to tell everybody. So maybe that's a part of it. The thing that also stands out to me is that Cracker Barrel is in the middle of renovating a couple of their stores. So they have been testing new interiors. And that was about like a month ago. Like, that has been out there and that was already getting some negative feedback on social. So this was also really interesting that they were hearing that and they still were like, I get it, time, money, effort. We're still going to put the new logo out. But that's what I thought was kind of interesting is like, people already maybe gave you a temperature check on how they're feeling about the new look on social. And it was like, they were like, but the internal data says something else and we're going to go with that.
Yeah. Gillian, what are you thinking? Like, how are brands planning these social strategies and how is the landscape of brand work on social changing that might be feeding into this?
Yeah, so I actually talked to a brand strategist for the American Eagle story who gave me a really interesting quote where she said, brands no longer own the narrative, audiences do. And they'll sort of like take the campaign and kind of run it through their own sort of like cultural lens, sort of like put it in the context of what's going on surrounding the person they're casting, surrounding the brand on social media, and kind of like interpret what the brand sort of meant based on their own kind of understanding. So, like with the Sydney Sweeney campaign, she was already sort of a controversial figure on social media. She had done a sort of controversial campaign with Dr. Squatch personal care brand recently where she was selling her bath water and it was very kind of like over sexualized. So people didn't love that already. And she's also sort of been embraced as sort of this like figure among the alt-right who kind of like the fact that she's sort of conventionally attractive and like the fact that she's sort of become a sex symbol, they're like, oh, woke is dead. Like she's sort of this new figure that we're gonna like raise up and claim. So I think brands maybe kind of have lost some control over the intention behind the campaign and just sort of like people will kind of take it and run with it. So it's just sort of like you kind of have to think about what's going on sort of in the surrounding context of the campaign. Sort of a similar situation, not to bring in another campaign, but with Elf Cosmetics, they teamed up with a comedian named Matt Rife, who has sort of a controversial past himself. He made a domestic violence joke in a Netflix special that he did. People were like, why pick him to represent your brand when you seem to be very like all of Elf's previous marketing has been very like about female empowerment. And there was also the fact that Elf's CMO had come out and said that part of the reason that they chose Matt Rife was because of kind of his online audience on TikTok, it being largely Gen Z and 18 to 24-year-old women. So like they kind of went off the audience data for Matt Rife, but didn't really consider sort of the social media context around him or just like the fact that he had been involved in this controversy. I also spoke to Elf's chief brand officer, who told me that I had brought up the pre-existing controversy around him and asked if they were worried that might impact the campaign before it launched. And she said that they weren't worried at all and that they sort of like support these creators and influential figures who do kind of disrupt norms and push boundaries. So I guess it's just kind of balancing the existing kind of cultural context around these people and being prepared that people might put words in your brand's mouth and kind of interpret what the brand meant by working with these people.
That's really wild for it to be that like rose-colored glasses a little bit of like I would just be really shocked if nobody on the Elf team had raised that concern before
Mm-hmm.
that campaign went out.
That's what people on social media were saying too. They're like, did no one Google just the name Matt Rife to see what came up? Because like obviously influencer vetting is very important and like kind of going through like what they've said on social media before and kind of like who they follow, other brands they've worked with, all that is very kind of crucial. But like just a quick Google search would have probably shown you that without that intensive influencer vetting.
Yeah, and that's also what Erica, I mean, you were pointing to earlier, where Cracker Barrel has been rolling out some of this updating for their stores over the past few months, and they've been seeing the data and not really looking beyond just the numbers. Because I believe you had in your story that in-store sales have been on the rise since they've been doing these refreshes. Is that right?
Yeah, so this is kind of the interesting thing. So traditionally we think of a brand doing a refresh when like same store sales, right, have not been good. People are not coming. We need to do something. And I believe they've had like 4 quarters of same store sales growth. I mean, it's fine. It's like 1 to 5%, like that's pretty good in today's world. So that is kind of interesting that they were just like, nope, we still need to do it. Again, I grant that they're trying to, like a lot of brands, right? We're trying to reach a younger audience. Like the brand needs to evolve and update. And there were marketers that said that. So now, because they have reverted back to the old logo, this presents like a bit of a predicament, right? Like you're trying to modernize the brand, you're trying to reach younger consumers, but you've clearly had brand fans young and old come in and say, I do not like this, please go back. So, I mean, are we going to see that younger, maybe people are like, oh, great, like Cracker Barrel listened, that resonates with me. Maybe it's not a brand, like a brand refresh. Maybe there are other channels that they'll need to lean into. I know that Cracker Barrel has been doing more around influencers and, being on social media. Their CMO has talked about changes in their store side and trying to make apparel like sweatshirts that resonates with Gen Z. Overall too, I know that the brand, like part of the new look was that they were trying to have a cleaner design for like digital channels, like you think about an app icon, right? Like an app, like the Cracker Barrel logo, the old one, the one they're sticking with, it's busy. It is. I mean, it's a line drawing of a guy in the barrel. It's kind of long. So part of their new look, I think, is they were hoping to have that a little cleaner. Although experts that I talked to were like, that's still an option, right? Like you could have the old logo as the official logo, and maybe we just have other cleaner brand assets in other places so that it does look good on a billboard or social or on your phone. And I guess they were taking that into account because on Twitter, their exact post is like, "We thank our guests for sharing your voices and love for Cracker Barrel. We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old timer will remain."
Yeah, you hit on something else that I wanted to bring up here, and am curious what y'all have heard from either experts or your own analysis on how important the response from the brand is. Sometimes there's the thought of just let this die down and get past it. Erika, it sounds like Cracker Barrel said, admitted a little bit of wrong in the situation. Gillian, American Eagle, waited quite a long time before they responded to the Sydney Sweeney ad. And then when they did respond, they said, like, y'all are all misinterpreting this ad, basically.
Hmm.
Sorry, not sorry.
They were like, sorry you felt that way. Yeah.
Exactly. So, how important is the actual brand response in these controversies? And what have y'all heard kind of best practices are for brands who find themselves swept up in this kind of discourse?
I mean, one of the experts I talked to for the American Eagle story told me that like the fact that American Eagle waited so long to like say anything sort of like fed some of the controversy as well. Just like people like kind of like it kind of fanned the flames where people were just kind of like putting words in American Eagle's mouth and like kind of talking about the whole is American Eagle promoting eugenics? Is American Eagle conservative because they're supporting Sydney Sweeney, who is this kind of conservative icon? Like the brand didn't really join in that conversation to kind of try to like tamp it down until pretty late. And then, like you said, like it was sort of like they didn't really say much. They were just like, we never meant to. Like it was always about the jeans, I think is what they said. Like the
Mhm.
as in the denim. um,
Yes, jeans with a J.
with a J. Yeah, it's hard to make that distinction over audio. But the expert I talked to also said something interesting where it's like the fact that like people were so upset about this shows that they do really care about the brand and they kind of wanted better for the brand, I guess, like some people did. She was saying like the fact that people are giving American Eagle feedback, a lot of the Gen Z consumers that they sort of are targeting. She said that like at the end of the day, if people didn't care, they wouldn't be engaging. So I think like it's important for the brand to kind of engage with the community who is sort of like trying to reach out to them via social media because social media really does bring people really close to brands like more than any other medium. So it is kind of the place where you'd want to kind of reach out to the audience who wants to obviously kind of communicate with you.
I think that's such a funny thing from brands to just be like, "Oh, we're so glad that you care about it." And I feel like a normal person is going to be like, "Yes, don't you? So please change it." Like we're literally telling you we don't like it, you should do something. I agree. Probably like I think at the speed of the internet, the speed of culture, like it is better I think to just kind of be like, okay, you get 24 maybe 48 hours and then I recommend being like you should say something to acknowledge it instead of just ignoring everybody.
Interesting. The last piece I wanted to hit on here is that both of these brand social discourse drama debacles also got swept up into a lot of political discourse as well. I mean, the American Eagle situation was very politicized. President Donald Trump was even commenting on it and applauding the alleged finding that Sydney Sweeney is perhaps a registered Republican. The Cracker Barrel campaign is a really interesting one. It seemed pretty apolitical, but first, Donald Trump Jr. and the official account for the Democratic Party were weighing in. And then, of course, President Trump's comments seemed to be a breaking point in Cracker Barrel's decision. Brands are terrified of being in kind of political turmoil right now. A lot of trauma from the Bud Light situation a few years ago, where that brand's business was affected by them doing a very small influencer partnership with a transgender influencer. So I'm curious what y'all have heard about what brands do when this happens, when the narrative starts skewing political, when political figures are chiming in on a brand's marketing, or I don't know if y'all have heard anything from experts on that.
I do think the fact that the social media platforms themselves have become like increasingly partisan since President Trump was inaugurated is really interesting. Sort of, I don't know if you guys remember, at his inauguration, sort of all of these CEOs and leaders at the social platforms were kind of in attendance. And Mark Zuckerberg also kind of started the year by announcing they were going to be like rolling back some of the hate speech policies on Meta platforms and removing fact checking. So I think the fact that the platforms themselves are sort of skewing more partisan is sort of like playing in here as well. The fact that social media has sort of become this like political kind of battleground more broadly, I think is sort of fueling some of these controversies. And then also just sort of the rise of like rage bait content, whether it's sort of like influencers kind of trying to like post things that will like purposely kind of generate anger, which leads to more comments and engagement, has been a thing for a bit. And now some people on social media are kind of accusing brands like American Eagle and Elf of kind of trying to take a similar strategy and kind of lean into that rage debate with their influencer partner choices, which no one I talked to, like expert wise, agreed with, but a lot of like Gen Zers on TikTok and stuff have brought that up.
I thought personally it was very funny to have like the Democratic Party be like, we also do not like this, but very true, right? Like, I think Gillian, it kind of goes to what you said too, of like, there's this point in a campaign where like it is out in the world and like people will put it through the lens that they will put it through because like that's just how it is. And you as a brand may have the best intentions, but like that, it just isn't how it plays out in the real world. So yeah, again, I think also interesting too, like the Cracker Barrel is a Southern brand, like the South, like being from the South, this is like a weirdly like diverse place of opinions and political views, despite what people might think about the South. But I think that's a part of it too, right? Is like, yes, just like how aligned is this with like your view of where this brand sits culturally, kind of a deal.
I do also think with the American Eagle situation, the fact that President Trump did kind of comment on it during like a press moment and sort of it actually boosted American Eagle's stock briefly after that because investors were like, oh, well, the president is talking about this campaign and this brand. I think that connection between politics and business right now is really interesting.
Okay, and similarly with Cracker Barrel, so after all, like when the new logo came out, their stock price actually fell late last week. But as of Wednesday, I believe, like it was up 8%. I think it was almost nearing its monthly high. So yeah, once again, just kind of a weird moment where the president can speak about a brand and Wall Street reacts to it. Ultimately, for both of these brands, I will be really interested to see what their next earnings calls looked like to be like, how much did this improve sales? How much did it improve traffic? Like, did it tank? Like, that is ultimately going to be the decider.
Any other, before we go, TLDR, advice for marketers, takeaways from these situations that you want to share?
I guess just at the end of the day, like remember your audience and who you're actually kind of like trying to aim this campaign at, especially with American Eagle. A lot of the backlash that I saw was people just kind of being like, who is this for? Like, why are you even doing this? Like, none of this is really aimed at us. And it was like a very big sort of like departure from how they were previously kind of targeting Gen Z with like a more sort of diverse range of like Gen Z creators and influencers and with different body shapes. And like Gen Z kind of felt more seen by that.
I guess if you're gonna, I mean, if you're gonna change the look, just I think any marketer knows, like, take a deep breath, embrace yourself because not everybody is going to love it. And I guess perhaps if you are truly, truly, truly trying to reach a new audience and you know it is going to not resonate with some other folks, like maybe it is worth kind of being like, we are trying to talk to this audience. We understand that this may not be, everybody's cup of tea, but this is who we're trying to speak to.
Also, please Google the person you're going to
Yeah.
work with at least before you start working with them.
Yeah, Google people.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining me. This was so enlightening.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
This week's account reviews to know. Hoka launched a global creative review. The shoemaker has worked with Stagwell's Anomaly since 2022. Hoka has been on the rise recently, reporting a 19.8% increase in sales during parent company Deckers Brand's most recent quarterly financial report. A few more headlines to know before your long weekend. Chatbot users may be surprised to see ads starting to pop up in their AI conversations. Companies like Zero Click, which is a chatbot ad network, pair advertisers with relevant context in conversations on platforms like ChatGPT. As AI adoption continues to grow, how ads fit into these products is an ongoing debate. Will paid responses diminish the impartiality of chatbots? But at the same time, AI companies, particularly startups, are feeling the pressure to flesh out monetization strategies for these incredibly costly technologies. Dig into the debate in the Ad Age article linked in this episode's description. Plus, Svedka is rebooting its Fembot character. After a decade hiatus from our screens, the curvaceous robot is back online with a mission to save in-person socialization. The vodka brand is featuring Fembot in a campaign encouraging people to put away their phones and enjoy nightlife with friends, even prompting consumers to submit photos of themselves on a night out for a chance to win $15 to cover a round of drinks. Finally, don't forget to get tickets for Ad Age's Business of Brands conference. The conference takes place September 16th and 17th in Chicago. Hear from marketing leaders from brands including McDonald's, Hasbro, Ulta Beauty, and General Mills, plus many more. Buy tickets at the link in this episode's show notes. And this week on Ad Age's Marketer's Brief, the CMO of Hinge talks developing loyalty with Gen Z. Listen to that on the Marketer's Brief podcast, available on your favorite podcast platform. You won't want to miss it. Go deep on any of the stories I've mentioned today by clicking the links in this episode's description. If you enjoy Ad Age Insider, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Have a topic you want me to dig into? Email your ideas to aapodcast@adage.com or DM me, Parker Heron, on LinkedIn. Thank you to my guests, Erika Wheless and Gillian Follett, and to producer Lauren Chiardio. Thanks to you for listening. I'm Parker Heron, and this is the Ad Age Insider. Enjoy your holiday weekend.